What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Ahead of Nintendo's price increase that'll be happening in September, they're actually making an interesting move here. One that'll actually get you a pretty good deal, depending on any of the games that maybe you'd be interested in, but it's also leading people to ask exactly why now, but we'll go over all of that here today. Also, we're going to be talking about Sega, who is canceling a massive game, and actually their reasoning now makes a lot of sense. And there was a leak, the apparent leak that was going around online yesterday, and it turned out to be fake, but it certainly got the internet buzzing, and it makes me want to see this game actually happen from WB at some point, but we'll go over all of that and more. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. Guys, we're every weekday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern time, trying to keep you up to date in the world of gaming. So just know, even if you don't get a notification in the morning, there's probably a video here to check out, but you can also, I guess, click the little bell down below next to the subscribe button to make sure you get it. Still, though, we are going to start today with MercurySteam, as they have announced layoffs. Well, they did that corporate speak, which we can see this is cataloged over on Nintendo Life as they are citing LinkedIn for this post, where MercurySteam says there is no easy way to share this kind of news, calling it workforce adjustment process, saying, quote, "We want to express our deepest respect, gratitude, and support for the people affected whose talent, effort, and commitment have been an important part of the studio's history." Of course, MercurySteam typically will contract or partner with Nintendo to create Metroid games like Metroid Dread most recently, and you kind of feel like they were going to then make another 2D Metroid game at some point, but these layoffs could also be related to maybe other projects that didn't pan out for MercurySteam, and so they're doing a workforce adjustment and laying off people just respectfully. Also, we had a new studio announcement and kind of gives us the answer as to where Harada was off to, and we can see this is over on gamesindustry.biz. It says SNK has announced it is investing in a new studio founded by Katsuhiro Harada, the veteran Bandai Namco producer and long-term perma-sunglasses wearing face of the Tekken franchise, okay? SNK and Versus Studio will collaborate on game software development to further strengthen their development capabilities. Now, apparently, they don't have any idea as to what they're doing yet, as it is just not decided. That's actually what they said, but no doubt that things will become even more exciting than ever before. A longtime friend and a worthy rival to us is how they're describing Harada here, and something tells me it'll probably be a fighting game. Go figure. SNK, Harada, yeah, it'll be a while. So this was more or less just letting everyone know where exactly he's going and what he's doing. At least here, forming a new studio with SNK's backing that it seems to be quite vast right now. Go figure. But that should allow him to make kind of whatever he wants. So at least in that regard, I am curious what exactly happens here, but it's probably going to be a few years before we even find out. Oh, and we did get the exact release date and even pricing on NBA The Run, which is just about a new age or new edition, I guess, almost, of NBA Street. This over on their official account, where they say NBA The Run is launching June 9th, 2026, PS5, Xbox, and Steam on PC for $29.99. That's actually, okay, that's pretty good. $30 coming out June 9th, so less than a month from now. They also have a deluxe edition for $40 that has different variations, and it looks like, I guess, different years of some of these athletes, like Steph Warriors 09 or Lucas Mavericks 2018, etc. So either way, the $30 for the base game, less than a month. Okay, yeah, I think that's fair. I am really interested in this game to see how it turns out. There are still questions around monetization, of course, for a game like this coming out of 2K, but at least for now, it does look like it pulls a lot of the strong parts of NBA Street into the more modern era. So I'll be taking a look at this game when it releases and probably going online to play with some friends and see how at least the online multiplayer works out, where you and a couple of friends go online as a team, take on other people. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo making an interesting move ahead of their price increase in the US. Now, in Japan, that price increase will be happening in less than 2 weeks now. But in the US, we have some time. We have several months, basically the entire summer. Well, it seems that Nintendo is at least trying to move a number, we'll say, of Switch 2 units ahead of the price increase, because let's face it, you make the system more expensive, it just will inherently be more difficult to sell, even if, yes, it's $450 to $500 or $500 to $550, say, for a special edition bundle that's going on at the time. But we can see, now this is over on Nintendo's website, saying Nintendo Switch 2 Choose Your Game bundle launches this summer. Okay, so the idea here is you get a Switch, and then you can choose from 3 different games, and it will be digital. It's a full game download, so not packing a cartridge or any of that in there. And you can choose between Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, or Pokemon Pocopia. All right, so if you take a look at the lineup here, as Nintendo themselves say, this coming in at $500, it could be a savings of up to $29.99, and that's mostly just if you choose Mario Kart World, you're going to be saving the most money because that is the only $80 game out of the lineup. The other ones, Donkey Kong Bonanza and Pokemon Pocopia, are $70 games. Doesn't necessarily mean you want Mario Kart World, because maybe you've just been hearing great things about Bonanza and you're like, hey, that's the one I want. Or maybe you've been wanting to get into Pocopia because it was going crazy online there, just a month ago or so. You picked that up. But I mean, I would probably recommend getting Mario Kart World. It's tough being, I mean, really like the only big $80 game out there, and then having to eventually buy that, as that's still a staple for the system, especially on the multiplayer side, which is clearly worth pointing out here. That is like the multiplayer game out of the lineup. So yeah, it makes sense, I feel like, to get Mario Kart World in the bundle, save $30, and then put that towards Donkey Kong Bonanza or Pokemon Pocopia if you want to get that down the road. But this has led to all kinds of questions as to why are they doing this when they're just going to be raising the price in September? Well, again, Nintendo right now, like Sony and Microsoft, are dealing with the situation around the RAM crisis, Ramageddon, the RAM crunch, where everything is going up in price, especially if it uses significant amounts of RAM, in Nintendo's case, 12 gigabytes of low-power DDR5 in the Switch 2. And in that case, also kind of competing with phones, and we know Apple has been going crazy trying to snap up as much DRAM as they can, overpaying significantly for contracts. So Nintendo here trying to figure stuff out, and really they're kind of forced to go to $500 according to them. And so moving as many Switch 2 systems as they possibly can ahead of that price increase is going to be important for them, because they're still in the user acquisition or just getting people to transfer over from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2. So just doing these different bundles is at least a way for them to add some kind of value to it. Because again, these are just download codes. They're not even dealing with the cost of a cartridge, and they are the ones that sell the software, produce the software, publish the software. So here they put that into the system, and it inherently has more value. But to Nintendo, it's not like they have to then also create more systems with chips to sell. It's like, no, we're just going to drop that in there, and now it feels like, okay, a $500 value. So I do believe they are going to be exploring these sorts of bundles more and more as the system gets expensive. And I don't know if they'll get to the position where they package in a Pro controller or more Joy-Cons or something. I think the idea of packaging a software specifically as just download codes is probably the most cost-effective way to add value to the system as it gets more expensive just to produce. But hey, it's great for the consumer. Absolutely. Take advantage of this bundle. I mean, if I look up and down the list here, I would probably recommend Donkey Kong Bonanza, even though I understand it makes sense to get Mario Kart World just because the $80 price tag versus $70. I just think Bonanza was such a good game, such an awesome experience on the system. And out of those 3, I do feel like it shows off more so what the Switch 2 is capable of over the Switch 1, because Donkey Kong Bonanza would probably make the Switch 1 like explode or just go at like 4 or 5 frames per second, if it's even possible. It's pretty impressive to see actually running in person there. But either way, look for this. It'll be going live, they say, in early June, so about a month from now. I would even just recommend holding off on picking up a Switch 2 if you've been planning for it, so you can take advantage of this bundle. Next up, let's talk about some early sales estimates around Saros. And this is kind of a shame because I do like this game. I think it's actually pretty good. Housemarque making a game that is better, I'll say, than Returnal, but it seems like it might be selling slower than Returnal, and it's been on the market for, 2 weeks now? And initially, we had some sales data after it was out for, I don't know, a day in April, to where it was struggling its way up the download charts, and it's like, well, I mean, it's not going to do great in April when it comes out for one day versus everything else been out. Let's see how it does in May. Well, now we are starting to see again some of those sales estimates, and this we can see. Now, this is over on Push Square, who's citing Linea Analytics. They say it's a slow start, which predicts the title has sold around 300,000 copies since it launched approximately 2 weeks ago. I do want to stress these are estimates, but still, Linea Analytics, they do have data that they are pulling from here, and they have ways to extrapolate this. So while there is a margin of error, it doesn't work out great. Even if it's like a 20% margin of error, it's still like, whew, this is it's taken a while there to get to 500,000. In fact, they say launch line, their estimates show that Saros is actually selling a little slower than Returnal, despite there being only about 8 million PS5s in the wild when Returnal launched versus the 93 million plus install base Saros launched into. The slow start suggests it will struggle to break even, given the reported $76 million development budget. Now, if we go off of the, 300,000 units sold estimate, this is probably around 22 or 23 million in terms of revenue generated for dollars. So yeah, they're a ways off. They definitely need to get to at least 1 million plus to break even on that. Remember, this is Sony. They don't have to then account for a 30% platform fee. They are the platform. In that case, though, it is a shame because while Returnal was something new. It was very special at the time because, I mean, it used the DualSense really well, but also it showed Housemarque making a significant leap. If you're thinking of Resogun and then you look at Returnal, it looks like a different studio made either one with the same general idea. So it was a big time upgrade for what we were used to Housemarque making. But going from Returnal to Saros wasn't as big of a jump, and one of the big detriments I see people say is it still kind of is Return. It still plays like Returnal, still feels like Returnal. They went a different direction where it's not as punishing, so I do think more people will finish Saros over Returnal. Certainly more people will platinum that game because the Returnal platinum was like egregious. It was quite annoying and frustrating, where Saros is just, as I'm going through it, trophies are popping for things I'm just doing in battles, and you complete the game and you have almost 75% of the trophies done, and then you go back and honestly finish them up in a couple of hours. And I don't mind those platinum trophies, but again, massive, massive contrast versus what we had there with Returnal. It's also a bit easier, but I think it's kind of tough right now for Housemarque even to separate itself from not only the crowd, but even to a degree, its previous entry with Returnal with what they've done here with Saros. So I do think this is a game, though, that Sony will look at as it's part of our first-party offerings. It makes the platform unique from other platforms, so it's worth having these games go out there, even if they're not massive sellers, because it is something that drives to the platform for maybe there's somebody out there who buys Returnal and then sticks around for the rest of the generation, then maybe even gets PS6. That's kind of the idea of these first-party games. So if they're not going to sell massive, massive numbers, they better at least be interesting and unique and something that gives the console an identity. And at least for now, Saros is just on the PS5. So it kind of fills that void. So people are concerned right now about Housemarque. Will Sony shut them down? I don't believe so. But this is also not exactly working in the positive overall direction for Housemarque when it comes to sales, because Returnal didn't exactly go crazy on sales charts. I don't even know if it ever hit 1 million copies. We'd have to basically be guessing on that since we never got an update beyond like 600,000 copies or something for Returnal. So here's hoping Saros just over time is able to climb, yes, to just the 1 million mark, because that would be, I think, a massive milestone then for Housemarque. Next up, let's talk about Sega and their Super game. We've been going over this and keeping tabs on it for 5 years now since they first really announced it, and now it's canceled. But I think there's a good reason for that. So if you take a look at some of their slides, the first one, which you'll see here, they do just say, hey, it's canceled. Our Super game is no longer in effect. Now, they do say there won't be any more costs or anything associated with it. So it seems like they just kind of called it quits and backed away from it at this point. Here's the thing. I saw this come up and I think everyone else had the same thought. Hold on, what does that mean for their revival project? Remember, they were bringing back a bunch of older games and trying to release new editions of them and, yeah, essentially revive or reinvigorate their old lineup of titles. That still seems to be a thing, as on slide 17 for their investors, they have listed Crazy Taxi, Golden Axe, Jet Set Radio, And Streets of Rage. Oh, look at that. Also, they have Alien Isolation down there, which is cool. But you see what I mean, though. They still have all these games in effect, in development. And the one out of those 4 I'm really curious about, obviously, Jet Set Radio. What are they going to do there, especially maybe with the online component? We'll see. But we did get a bit more information. This was from a Sega representative to GameFile, saying when we launched the initiative in 2019, we positioned 2 major pillars of our growth strategy. 1, to focus on our major IP and expand them, and 2, develop a AAA online title to achieve significant growth in mid and long term. And we named this project Super Game to reflect our strong commitment to pursuing this ambition. Leveraging the expertise of developing and operating online games that we cultivated through Phantasy Star Online 2 and our extensive IP portfolio, we work to create a new form of entertainment that goes beyond the concepts of conventional games. Given the ambitious nature of the project, we adopted a long-term R&D phase for technical validation and related activities. We proceeded cautiously with the intention of moving to full-scale development only after we confirmed sufficient feasibility. However, in light of intensifying market competition, the emergence of competing titles based on similar concepts, and our business conditions, we made the decision to discontinue the development of Super Game during the fiscal year ending March 2026, and that is the right move. All right, so Sega, what they were describing with the Super Game, and they occasionally bring it up, it really did sound like almost a Fortnite, as in live service, ongoing game that was viewed more as a platform to bring together all of their other games. And it kind of seemed like it was going to play off of this retro revival, as in Jet Set Radio and Golden Axe and Shinobi. They would all be thrown into this, and it would be a way to access them. At least that's kind of the vision that was kind of being pitched there. And we've seen enough, I think, with the live service stuff, and Sega was estimating this could end up being almost $1 billion of cost. Yeah, you might want to just cool it on that one and just cut your losses here. And it seems like that's what they are doing. And again, I think it is the right move, because we see live service games get announced all the time, and they I would say more times than not, I think most of us can agree, they end up failing completely. Sometimes spectacularly. Concord gets brought up all the time, but there are so many others, High Guard, etc. So I think Sega instead, looking around and going, you know what? Maybe we'll just try traditional game development, and instead of trying to tie together Jet Set Radio and Crazy Taxi, I don't know, maybe we'll just make 2 different games. Wow, crazy concept, right? And maybe they won't always be online or live service. Maybe we'll make, get this, a single-player game with a multiplayer component. I know. Mind-blowing stuff. But I think that's what they're doing right now, and I actually prefer that, so good. I'm glad this Super Game project has been canceled. I think it'll just end up being better for Sega in the long run. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a leak that ends up being fake. This is all going on throughout the day yesterday, and it's kind of a shame to a degree, because I do think this is what Rocksteady and WB should be doing. But we'll see if it ends up panning out some other way. However, this has to do with them making a Batman Beyond game. It first surfaced on 4chan. I know, that's where I was looking. I said, all right, sure. And it just started to really pick up steam online, to where it was being posted to several big forums. And then you end up having some people within the industry chime in, and we had that as well, kind of dispelling all of this. But first we can see, now this was making the rounds again to places like Reset Era and Reddit. And the gist of it here was Rocksteady picked up the Batman Beyond project that WB scrapped after the failure of Suicide Squad. The game takes place after a massive time skip post Arkham Knight, and the setting is described as a more grounded version of a futuristic city. So they used like cyberpunk as an example here. The story is a loose adaptation of the original animated series story, which includes an elderly Bruce Wayne mentoring Terry McGinnis to take up the mantle of Batman. The leaker claims the Nemesis system will be in the game, so they were basically hitting all the high notes, the things that people really wanted to hear. Batman Beyond. Okay, big time skip after Arkham Knight. All right, it's not going to exactly follow the animated series. Going to be kind of their own loose adaptation of it, which, again, I think is also the correct strategy, to keep people guessing. And the Nemesis system. Turns out it's probably not going to happen, as Jason Schreier just showed up on Reset Era and just said, fake. And he does have insight to Rocksteady, so I feel like he most likely has an idea as to either what they're working on, or at least what's being pitched internally. And I think this is a massive shame, because I think Batman Beyond would do well if they go back to the drawing board and think more in terms of what made Batman, great back when they were doing like the trilogy run there of where they had Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight. I mean, I know Arkham Knight came out with some issues there, especially on PC, but man, when Arkham Asylum and then Arkham City hit, those were some magical releases. So I wouldn't mind them going back, thinking about it a bit more and going, okay, how do we do something like that, but still make it feel a bit new? I don't know. Batman Beyond, you could jump way ahead, as they mentioned, play around with some of the technology that's available, and have an interesting dynamic between an older Bruce Wayne and Terry McGinnis. I think that would be great. Unfortunately, at least what's being pitched here, even with the Nemesis system, seems to be fake, but I do like the reception online, and I hope that WB noticed that, man, people were really excited for this game there for about 24 hours before it got completely shut down. And before we go to the comment of the day, we'll take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, which game would you recommend to a first-time Switch 2 buyer to pick for a bundle? Donkey Kong Bonanza, I mean, easily won this 57%, then Mario Kart World, then Pokemon Pocopia. Now, it's pretty obvious to me if you want a multiplayer game, you're going with Mario Kart World, no question there, or if you're looking to pick a system up just for family fun, yes, Mario Kart World. But if you're looking for something I think new and interesting, Donkey Kong Bonanza. If you're a Pokemon fan, probably just go ahead and grab Pocopia because it is an interesting and new twist on the entire Pokemon universe. And I do think Nintendo is looking to sell many Switch 2 systems ahead of Pokemon when that comes out sometime in 2027. But along with things like bundles, they got to get the system cheaper. I think getting a Switch 2 Lite out just ahead of Pokemon Winds and Waves, whenever that ends up coming out next year, would make a ton of sense. For now though, yeah, just load up with the bundles and try to add some extra value through just download codes. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Logical Error, who says, "What? I thought exclusivity was the future." This is with Shift Up and how it appears that Stellar Blade 2 will be going multi-platform. And that's the thing with exclusivity, it really just makes sense, for the most part, I'll say, for platform holders, because they have to work to sell their console. That's why they use exclusivity for that. They go, hey, how do we get people to our platform? How do we have an identity for the PlayStation 5 or for the Switch 2? You make games specifically for it, and yes, you lock it to the platform. Back in the day, it was, hey, we're going to develop for some really weird and bespoke hardware, and I think that was awesome because you would see, like, hey, what can we really get out of this PlayStation 2, or what can we really get out of this GameCube or Xbox? And we saw some pretty impressive things back then, but these systems have gotten closer and closer and more similar, specifically PS5 and Xbox. The Switch 2, still kind of weird in what it does with this NVIDIA chip, but for the most part, if you're a third party, it makes no sense unless you are getting funding directly from one of these platform holders to, yes, keep your game just exclusive. Otherwise, you should be taking advantage of the entire market. And yeah, that includes cell phones at this point, because even those are getting to a state of just being capable enough to run these games and get to a wider audience. So Stellar Blade is going to be all over the place. I assume Shift Up is going to try to port that everywhere they can. And then same deal with Stellar Blade 2. I would expect to see that on pretty much all platforms at that point, at least for Nintendo, Sony, and probably Microsoft, but we'll see. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. If you missed yesterday's Newswave, I'll leave it up here in a card. Or maybe you wanted to see an update between GameStop and eBay, because eBay did respond and GameStop probably not thrilled about it, but I did a video on it. I'll leave it right below. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.